Hello, welcome to Yoga Story Time. Thank you so much for being here today. Maybe one day I'll figure out time management, but until then, apologies for the delay. Although right now the community is small enough so I can kind of, um, just show up whenever. I really shouldn't though. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being here. We will be reading, well, I will be reading, and we will be um, discussing to whatever degree we're able to discuss here. Always feel free to chime in the comments your own that's what I forgot. Your own commentary. I am going to need water, and I knew that there was something that I forgot. So I am going to go get some water until I return. I will leave you with this music. I've really so I've really packed my home office here. I'll give you a little. I don't think I have anything um that is confidential in here. So yeah, I'm gonna give you a little tour of the home office I have here behind me. I used to run a bunch. I have done a couple of half marathons and some 5Ks, so I have some of these back here, and then some of these are from events that I've been to, film festivals and leadership conferences and stuff. Up here we have this lovely thing. I am the volunteer coordinator for Mandala Yoga Fest. Is it Mandala or Mandala? I've heard it both ways. Reference to psych. Um, so I have here up here. The first year was 2023. Was our first year doing the Mandala Yoga Festival here in Appleton, Wisconsin, and I was and continue to be the volunteer experiences coordinator for that. So that was a gift from our organizers. It's just kind of my bio up there. There's a tote bag from here. Give you a little tour around the room. We have a ton of books. And no, I have not read all of the books that I have. Yes, I am one of those people, but I have heard from someone has said that books are like wine. You collect them and then you age them and then eventually you read them, maybe if you don't die before before you get to them. Here I have post-it notes up there. That's just my empowered mindset stuff. So, um, and then just some quotes that help motivate me. Joy is an act of resistance. Keep going is a phrase, just simple two-word phrase that when I was in going to Lawrence University here in Appleton, took several creative writing classes, had a creative writing mentor, professor who would always write on our papers, keep going, as encouragement to continue improving our writing. And then more books. There's first person. Sorry if this is boring for anyone, but just a little bit about me here. I was in a independent film here called First Person, and there were, what is that? 12, 12 of us, 10 of us, 14, 10? Can't remember. But a few of us that just told personal stories and yeah, all done in one take. Each person's story done in one take. And then of course we have more books. We just have a closet, my door, my printer, my purse. Ooh, the cats are getting I can hear the cats in the background, so hopefully you're not hearing that. I have my tablet and just some electronics, my water, and more books, more books, more books. And back to voila, c'est moi, it's me. All right, so with that fun little trip around the room, we're going to get into the Yoga Sutras. And if you have read in the description, we did. I have done a couple of videos here on the Yoga Sutras, so you can check out those videos, or you can go directly to Gutenberg.org, which is a site that has free um, free public domain, that's the phrase that I'm looking for. Public domain works. Namaste. Thank you so much for being here. Trilok Singh, thank you so much for being here. Um, yeah, Gutenberg.org has several public domain works, and one of them is this version of the Yoga Sutras that I have been slowly reading for us all. So trying to work this into the schedule because I really, really enjoy reading out loud. Um, but I also have to make sure that I properly manage my time, value my time and energy, and all of that fun stuff. So we're going to read this today, and then on Wednesday, I had rescheduled an introduction to yoga. We're going to continue reading that on Wednesday. So let's get into it. We're going to read 30 sutras 30 through what did I say? 30 through 44. And I'll offer a little bit of commentary here and there as it comes to mind. And do feel free to do the same. So as I read through these yoga sutras, feel free to chime in the comments. Maybe anything, any insight that you have into what I'm reading, anything that you disagree with, anything that you agree with, anything that you're grappling with, because that's the kind of commentary that I'll give here as well. I'll share some of the things that I am grappling with and whatever insights come to mind for me. Really, I'm just the kind of conduit here to get this ancient wisdom out there into the universe and see how it lands for all of us. So, with that, once again, if you haven't watched the first two videos, please do for context if you want the context. Or again, you can go to Gutenberg.org, look up Yoga Sutras. This is the only version that is available in the public domain. So, and just feel free to read up to Sutra 29 and then revisit this video for Sutras 30 through 44. Here we go. 30. The barriers to interior consciousness, which drive the psychic nature this way and that, are these: sickness, inertia, doubt, light-mindedness, laziness, intemperance, false notions, inability to reach a stage of meditation or to hold it when reached. And I always like to grab a notebook so I can jot down some notes for myself. All right. Yoga Sutras. We must remember that when we are considering the spiritual man as enwrapped and enmeshed by the psychic nature, the emotional and mental powers, and and as unable to come to clear consciousness, unable to stand and see clearly because of the psychic veils of the personality. 9 of these are enumerated, and they go pretty thoroughly into the brute toughness of the psychic nature. Sickness is included rather for its effect on the emotions and mind, since bodily infirmity, such as blindness or deafness, is not insuperable. It is no insuperable barrier to spiritual life, and may sometimes be a help as cutting off distractions. It will be well for us to ponder over each of these 9 activities, thinking of each as a psychic state, a barrier to the interior consciousness of the spiritual man. So, right away, here we're getting into what are some of those barriers essentially to living this spiritual life, to being in a state of calmness and hmm, equilibrium. Our bodies naturally, biologically, crave homeostasis. We want to find that place of balance between effort and ease. We don't want just ease because then there's nothing, we do nothing. And we don't want just effort because, of course, that can cause suffering and burnout and um, great, great deal of stress. We want a balance of that. And I love how he says in here this idea of certain things that some might call physical limitations or some might call disabilities, or I have heard the term diverse abilities, things like blindness or deafness, being something that are not, um, they don't keep us from spiritual living. And I think, well, well, let me just go into the rest of this rather than getting too deep in the weeds here. We will go on to 31. Grieving, despondency, bodily restlessness, the drawing in and sending forth of the life breath also contribute to drive the psychic nature to and fro. The first 2 moods are easily understood. We can well see we can well see Bo Ace. I'm confused by the word or use of the word here, so apologies. We can well see bow a sudden psychic condition flagrantly opposed to the pure and positive joy of spiritual life would be okay. So I think this is a typo, and I think this is meant to be how and not bow. And that is why I'm so confused. Okay. We can well see how a sodden psychic condition flagrantly opposed to the pure and positive joy of spiritual life would be a barrier. The next, bodily restlessness, is in a special way the fault of our day and generation. So just a reminder that we are reading a work that is from, let me go up here. Edited by Charles Johnston and, okay, 2001. I think I was thinking of the other one that I'm reading, which is from the early 1900s. Okay. Where were we? Apologies. I went too far up, and now I am trying to find. Oh, yes, because we are in. Wait, 30, 31. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Okay. Um, I should not have moved. Let me There we go. Oh, apologies. And if you're catching this on the replay, I have not I you'll probably see that it's like the live experience, which may not be the best just because I will probably not get a chance to edit these for a while. But moving on. We are on Sutra 31. My goodness. Okay. Talking about grieving and despondency and so on. Okay. The next, bodily restlessness, is in a special way the fault of our day and generation. Mm. When it is conquered, mental restlessness will be half conquered too. The next two terms, concerning the life breath, offer some difficulty. The surface meaning is harsh and irregular breathing. The deeper meaning is a life of harsh and irregular impulses. 32. Steady application to a principle in the way to put a stop to these, to those former um, the bodily restlessness and so on. The will, which in its pristine state was full of vigor, has been steadily corrupted by self-indulgence, the seeking of moods and sensations for sensation's sake. Hence come all the morbid and sickly moods of the mind. The remedy is a return to the pristine state of the will by vigorous, positive effort, or, as we are here told, by steady application to a principle. The principle to which we should thus steadily apply ourselves should be one arising from the reality of spiritual life. Valorous work for the soul in others as in ourselves. So that's really beautiful. To me, I think of this idea of principles. We could also think of values. So, what are meaningful values in our lives that can help to temper tiredness of body, uh, grief, that can help temper What was this any sense of despondency? It is it's so important, I think, for us to have, and we have all, if we have any age to us at all, well, older um, age to us, we have most of us experienced places of deep grief. We've lost people, or even if not just grief from the passing of loved ones, grief from losing maybe some sense of stability, the world around us. Um, we have all been in places or maybe glimpsed, even just a little bit, despair, been in places where we're lacking hope. And so when we have a spiritual practice, when we have something meaningful in our lives or some principle or principles or values, those are the things that can help us, I believe, those are the things that can help us to move through, not to ignore or to escape from, but help us to move through some of those darker moments. Yes. Feel free to comment. Share your thoughts on that. 33. By sympathy with the happy, compassion for the sorrowful, delight in the holy, disregard of the unholy, the psychic nature moves to gracious peace. Mm. When we are wrapped up in ourselves, shrouded with the cloak of our egotism, absorbed in our pains and bitter thoughts, we are not willing to disturb or strain our own sickly mood by giving kindly sympathy to the happy, thus doubling their joy, or by showing compassion for the sad, thus having their sorrow. We refuse to find delight in holy things and let the mind brood in sadness, in sad pessimism on unholy things. All these evil psychic moods must be conquered by strong effort of will. This rending of the veils will reveal to us something of the grace and peace which are of the interior consciousness of the spiritual man. So I don't know about y'all, but that is really speaking to me, and I think it can speak to all of us. We've all been in places where we're in our own heads about maybe unfairnesses, maybe injustices, maybe some sense of hurt that we have experienced. And this, what this seems to be saying here is that when we are wrapped up in that sense of bitterness about our own story, because everybody has a story. When we're wrapped up in the bitterness of our own story, which we all have been there, um, we're not able to be happy. I have experienced this a number of times over the last couple of years where I'm just like so encumbered by a frustration of bitterness and sadness over doesn't even matter, over whatever, that I found it difficult to be happy with people who are happy or to find a deeper sense of compassion for the people around me or to see holiness or beauty or love or gentleness where it was because I felt so burdened by a sadness and bitterness that keeps us from that more spiritual, peaceful place. 34. Or peace may be reached by the even sending forth and control of the life breath. Here again, we may look for a double meaning. First, that even and quiet breathing, which is a part of the victory over bodily restlessness, then the even and quiet tenor of life, without harsh or dissonant impulses, which brings stillness to the heart. So, of course, we know by research and by simply experience, if you have done breath practices, and if you follow me here and join me for meditation for misfits, I do have some breath work and Om practices that I guide. And that deep breathing, just finding even just 3 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, or in and out through the nose. Just those 3 deep breaths automatically bring a calm to our nervous system, which can then trigger a clarity of mind. And this is saying the same thing with the quietness and evenness of life. When we start to seek a deeper sense of calm in our lives, let go of any of the drama around us. That's not to say that we don't address what we need to address, whether within us or around us, but rather that we work to be. I always think of it as that eye in the center of the storm, the calmest place where we can see all of the chaos around us, but we can still remain calm so that with that calmness can do, or so that with that calmness breeds then clarity as to what our role truly is, if anything. 34. Nope, that's what I just read. So the evenness of breath and the evenness and quietness of life. 35. I'm checking the time because I do need to. My husband will be home from work and he will come in through the door and he will not know that I am doing this live. So I need to let him know so that um so that he's not too loud when he comes in. Usually, I mean, it's not loud. It's like, "Hey," um, but just so that he's aware. So I'm gonna let him know that, "Hey, doing a live." And that's really all that should be enough for him to know that, to come in quietly if he can. All right, 35. Faithful, persistent application to any object, if completely attained, will bind the mind to steadiness. We are still considering how to overcome the wavering and perturb- per- perturbation of the psychic nature, which make it quite unfit to transmit the inward consciousness and stillness. We are once more told to use the will and to train it by steady and persistent work, by sitting close to our work, in the phrase of the original. Yeah, so this is like gazing at an object. Like when we first start meditation, uh, it can sometimes help for us to focus in on a particular object. In fact, this is one of my goals this year, letting go of some of the old stuff and really redirecting and setting my focus on things, for example, like this. So, yeah, feel free to share in the comments what you are focusing on that is helping you to maybe let go of some of the things that are outside of your control and maybe have thrown you to and fro um, from time to time, if you have something. I like that, sitting close to our work. So Sukhasana is Sanskrit for easy seat, and it's the coming into that cross-legged seat, which is not easy for everyone. It is sometimes quite difficult for some who may have tense hips. And yeah, so this idea of sitting close reminds me of Sukhasana, which is this idea of finding a seated position of both. And I just talked about this a little bit of both ease and effort. So there's a little bit of effort sitting upright in this idea of sitting close to our work. We are so closely engaged with our meaningful work that that there's no room really for anything outside of that to perturb us. As also will a joyful, radiant spirit. There is no such illusion as gloomy pessimism, and it has been truly said that a man's cheerfulness is the measure of his faith. Gloom, despondency, the pale cast of thought are very amenable to the will. Sturdy and courageous effort will bring a clear and valorous mind, but it must always be remembered that this is not for solace to the personal man. It is rather an offering to the ideal of spiritual life, a contribution to the universal and universally shared treasure in heaven. So I do want to I one of my comments on this idea of gloom, despondency, and pale cast of thought, because one thing that is not directly addressed because it wasn't known and thought of in this way in these ancient times is this idea of or is the reality of depression. So I want to be very sensitive when reading through these things that um, that in fact there are people that live with depression, myself included. So for those of us who may struggle with mental health, um, may struggle with our mental health and may find it even more of an exhaustive effort at times to be joyful and radiant and cheerful. I want to caution us not to let these texts or any spiritual or religious texts for that matter make us in any way feel inadequate or undeserving of a spiritual path and life. We will not always be in a happy, cheerful mood. and I may even be misinterpreting this too, or be misinterpreting this. Um, However, when I see things like this sometimes where it says gloom, despondency, the pale cast of thought, and this idea of cheerfulness is the measure of his faith, that reads to me as toxic positivity, which I take issue with. So, again, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments on that. 37. Or the purging of self-indulgence from the psychic nature. We must recognize that the fall of man is a reality, exemplified in our own persons. We have quite other sins than the animals and are far more deleterious. And they have all come through self-indulgence, with which our psychic natures are soaked through and through. As we climbed downhill for our pleasure, so we must climb up again for our purification and restoration to our former high estate. The process is painful, perhaps, yet indispensable. This I can appreciate because it is, I think, one of the many reasons, or one of the reasons why people find it difficult to seek a spiritual life aside from any pain or hurt that might have existed in a previous religious or spiritual space. One of the reasons is that it requires a deep sense of self reflection, self awareness, and at times even self denial or what might feel like self denial. So, this idea of the process being painful, I think, is quite true when we're holding up a mirror to ourselves and we see all that we are, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. That can be quite heavy and it can be quite painful because when we see truly, mm, especially when we see those, mm, less desirable hello, words. When we see less desirable parts of ourselves, we are convicted in that, and we have to acknowledge that, sometimes we'll see something in others that we don't like. And then when we get into that place where we're doing that deep self-reflection, we'll see that in us, in ourselves, and then have to kind of reconcile with what we're seeing, which is not easy. It is not easy, but it is necessary, I think, if we are to truly live a spiritual life. 38. Or a pondering on the perceptions gained in dreams and dreamless sleep. For the Eastern sages, dreams are, it is true, made up of images of waking life, reflections of what the eyes have seen and the ears heard. But dreams are something more, for the images are in a sense real, objective on their own plane, and the knowledge that there is another world, even a dream world, lightens the tyranny of material life. Much of poetry and art is such a solace from dreamland. But there is more in dream, for it may image what is above, as well as what is below, not only the children of men, but also the children by the shore of the immortal sea that brought us hither, may throw their images on this magic mirror, so too of the secrets of dreamless sleep with its pure vision in even greater degree. I believe to a degree that our dreams can be quite meaningful. I remember a dream that I had, and a few dreams have stuck with me. But this one particular dream that I had, I remember, and do feel free, share your dreams in the comments below. Um, One particular dream I had was of I was by a pool, and mm, there was this hamster, this tiny little rodent-looking animal that looked like a hamster or maybe a vole, and it was scurrying across, and then it fell into the pool, into the water, and started sinking and sinking to the bottom. And I jumped in trying to save it. And I remember that I took it, lifted it up out of the water, and at first it seemed lifeless. And I had in the dream, a friend of mine once said, "Oh, I think it's more important the feelings in the dream than necessarily the images." And I think both. I think both, just personally. But the feeling that I had was of the strong one, this kind of sadness, thinking that this animal might not have lived. And then I had this strong desire for it to be alive. And of course, it's a dream, right? So it comes to life. It's alive. It's alive again. And I woke up from that dream just filled with such a hope and an optimism about life. Now, that was a moment. It was a moment in time. But I think that dreams can have that kind of power. Now, they can also have the power to make us quite sad and despondent because I've had those dreams as well, waking up and just being like, "Can I go back to sleep and have a nicer dream? Because now I just feel mad." Ah, all right, moving on. 39. Or meditative brooding on what is dearest to the heart. Here is a thought which our own day is beginning to grasp, that love is a form of knowledge, that we truly know anything or any person by becoming one therewith in love. Thus love has a wisdom that the mind cannot claim, and by the heart love and by this hearty love, this becoming one with what is beyond our personal borders, we may take a long step toward freedom. 2 directions for this may be suggested: the pure love of the artist for his work, and the earnest, compassionate search into the hearts of others. 40. We're moving beyond 45 minutes, but I do want to get through 44, so I'll just continue reading and maybe do a little comment at the end. 40. Thus he masters all, from the atom to the infinite. Newton was asked about how he made his discoveries. By intending my mind on them, he replied. By intending my mind on them, he replied. This steady pressure, this becoming one with what we seek to understand, whether it be atom or soul, is the one means to know. When we become a thing, we really know it, not otherwise. Therefore, live the life, to know the doctrine. Do the will of the Father, if you would know the Father. So I want to reiterate, because this is a translation by this Charles Johnston. person who is clearly taking the Yoga Sutras and interpreting it through the lens of a Western Christianity, um, or of a Christianity. So I want to make that note because the Yoga Sutra itself is interpreted as, "Thus he masters all, from the atom to the infinite." That has a much more vague and broad reaching implication than saying something such as, "Do the will of the Father if you would know the Father." Ultimately, this comes down to if we are to know something, we must be in it. I think about the learning, and of course, I'm commenting here. Yeah, this is just going to go longer than 45 minutes. It's fine. This reminds me of learning languages. One of the things that people talk about with regards to learning languages and how to learn them is not through certain apps necessarily, though it can be a good starting place. Um, or even through dictionaries, but actually through immersing oneself into the culture and into that language, talking to people who can speak the language so that you are hearing it as it is meant to be um, heard and are able then to respond and speak it and must speak it more regularly. I remember in college, and I did not take as much advantage of these as these sessions as I might now. But learning French was not priority for me, but it was a requirement of the university that we take at least 3 terms of a language, and so we had these things called language tables, which during a lunch hour, every once in a while, the guest, usually a foreign exchange student, uh, the person that knew the language well, would be at lunch, and we would be having lunch together and speaking and listening to one another. So yeah, being immersed in the spiritual life is a way that we know the spiritual life. 41. When the perturbations per oh, these words, man, of the psychic nature have all been stilled, then the consciousness, like a pure crystal, takes the color of what it rests on, whether that be the perceiver perceiving or the thing perceived. This is a fuller expression of the last sutra and is so lucid that comment can hardly add to it. Everything is either perceiver, perceiving, or the thing perceived, or as we might say, consciousness, force, or matter. The sage tells us that the one key will unlock the secrets of all three, the secrets of consciousness, force, and matter alike. The thought is that the cordial sympathy of a gentle heart intuitively understanding the hearts of others is really a manifestation of the same power as that penetrating perception whereby one divines the secrets of planetary motions or atomic structure. I'm going to write it down. We are perceiver, perceiving, or perceived. And then his interpretation, we are force. Apologies. Thank you for your patience. Force, matter. Force or matter. Okay. Consciousness, force, matter. There we go. Consciousness. Okay. 42. When the consciousness, poised in perceiving, blends together the name, the object dwelt on, and the idea, this is perception with exterior consideration. In the first stage of the consideration of an external object, the perceiving mind comes to it, preoccupied by the name and idea conventionally associated with that object. For example, in coming to, I'm just trying to stretch out my leg here. Ooh. For example, in coming to the study of a book, we think of the author, his period, the school to which he belongs. The second stage, set forth in the next sutra, goes directly to the spiritual meaning of the book, setting its traditional trappings aside and finding its application to our own experience and problems. The commentator takes a very simple illustration, cow, where one considers in the first stage the name of the cow, the animal itself, and the idea of a cow in the mind. In the second stage, one pushes these trappings aside and entering into the inmost being of the cow shares its consciousness, as do some of the artists who paint cows. They get at the very life of what they study and paint. 43. When the object dwells in the mind, clear of memory pictures, uncolored by the mind, as a pure luminous idea, this is perception without exterior or consideration. We are still considering external visible objects. Such perception as is here described is of the nature of that penetrating vision whereby Newton, intending his mind on things, made his discoveries, or that whereby a really great portrait painter pierces to the soul of him whom he paints, and makes that soul live on canvases. These stages of perception are described in this way, to lead the mind up to an understanding of the piercing soul vision of the spiritual man, the immortal. 44. The same two steps, when referring to things of finer substance, are said to be with or without judicial action of the mind. We now come to mental or psychical objects, to images in the mind. It is precisely by comparing, arranging, and superposing these mind images that we get our general notions or concepts. This process of analysis and synthesis, whereby we select certain qualities in a group of mind images and then range together those of like quality, is the judicial action of the mind spoken of. So categorization. But when we exercise swift divination upon the mind images, as does a poet or a man of genius, then we use a power higher than the judicial, and one nearer to the keen vision of the spiritual man. So if I am reading this correctly, we have this image, we categorize it into wherever we however we're categorizing things. So let's say we have the image of an ocean in our mind, and we might categorize that into mm, maybe meditative images. We might categorize that into uh, uh, spatial elements of the earth, like sky, water, land. We have this water. We might categorize it into mm, movement, something that moves. And we have these different categories of things that move. And then this is suggesting this last line here says, but when we exercise swift divination upon the mind images, so we're aligned with this spiritual part of ourselves or the divine, and then compares this, he says, as does a poet or a man of genius, then we use a power higher than the judicial. So we let go of whatever the categorization is in favor of whatever might be for us a spiritual meaning of that object or of that image, and one nearer to the keen vision of the spiritual man. So now we're looking at this ocean. This actually reminds me of a video recording my dad back in the 90s when we were kids, way into he had that one of these huge camcorders that sat on your shoulder, and he recorded everything everything under the sun. And we have this VHS tape. Uh, for those that might be young, a VHS tape is no, just look it up. So we had this camcorder and with these VHS tape, and there's a video where I am probably about 8 or 9 years old. Everything in my memory when when I recall my childhood is either when I'm 8 or 9. I might have been 7. I might have been 10. But we were living in Yuma, Arizona at the time, and we had just traveled to San Diego. We went to SeaWorld, and we were coming back, and we stopped for a moment at this beach. There's nobody else on it. It was kind of a colder day, um, at least for the Southwest. And so we have all this sand, we have this ocean before us, and the camera sits on me. My dad is recording, and the camera sits on me, and and it's recording the back of me as I'm looking out over the expanse of the ocean. And whenever I have looked out at water, particularly looking out at the ocean, I've always felt this both sense of reverence and fear because water is powerful, right? And so in that moment, I was having this sort of communion as a child with the water, just looking out at it, very meditative, embracing the waves as they were crashing because it was a windy day, very windy day, and the waves were crashing in, and I was just in awe. I was just in absolute awe. You could see nothing beyond just water going out into what seemed like the end of the earth. And my dad had captured that moment on film. And because he's a man of his generation, made a silly remark saying something like, "Oh, she looks like she's in a trance." And in fact, I think I kind of was. So, with that, that is all coming back to this idea that we can find in our mind images these moments of these divine moments, these moments of being spiritually present to the thing that we might judge or put into a category. We take it out of that category and in and overlay it with spiritual meaning. With that, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. I went way over, I guess not too bad, 15, 17 minutes over the 45 minutes. I will be back on Wednesday to read an introduction to yoga or continue the reading of an introduction to yoga. So, wherever you're following me, you should see that up. I have done 3 or 4 videos on that book, so you can watch those videos to in preparation, or again, you can go to Gutenberg.org where you can find an introduction to yoga by Annie Besant. That is one of the books that I'm reading here on Yoga Storytime. And you can also find this interpretation of Yoga Sutras. It's the only Yoga Sutras interpretation in the public domain on Project Gutenberg, Gutenberg.org. So again, check out that site if you want to find public domain works that you can read for free, and particularly these works if you want to read ahead or the previous sections. With that together, let's take 3 breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. Together we breathe in. Open mouth, exhale, let it go. Inhale. Open mouth, exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being you. Take care of yourselves out there. Peace.